So before I start this video, I'm just going to say I don't normally follow game news because it either pisses me off or just reiterates what I already know about the gaming industry. And my opinion on the gaming industry is that most game developers who have an established franchise basically just pull money from their fans to push out a yearly or bi-yearly installment of some unpolished, unfinished, minimal content pile of garbage that they rely on the fact consoles are online all the time to say, oh, we'll push updates and more content later. And for those who are really scummy, we'll push more content later that we'll charge you for. Now, I say most because there are a few companies who are an exception, and this is not going to be a surprise to anybody who knows me, but Halo Infinite was one of those games that I think is trying to be the exception. And I'm a Halo fan. I'm a 20-year Halo fan. I've been playing it since it launched. But I will even admit that at launch, Halo Infinite was not finished, and it was lacking content. Now, that is on the multiplayer side. The campaign, I actually enjoyed. I think the campaign is probably the best one that has come out since the Bungie era Halo games. It's definitely the best one out of 343, and I would put this right alongside or just below Halo Reach. But I'm not here to talk about the campaign. I'm here to talk about the multiplayer experience because another game company, another franchise, the developers of that franchise decided that they wanted to blame the failure of their game on the success of Halo Infinite. Now, I said at the start of this video that I don't follow game news, and this was actually brought to my attention on my Discord and over on a live stream, which you can check out my Discord down below if you want. But what's happening is that EA and DICE are blaming the failure of Battlefield 2042 on Halo Infinite's success. And I believe the term that was used was that Halo Infinite's multiplayer was perceived as more polished. Now, I'm no game developer. I barely know how games work as it is. I just enjoy playing them. But if you're looking at this... Cool, well... There we go. Which, like I mentioned earlier, was lacking content, had some glitches. They are getting fixed, and we do have more content now. But if you're looking at this... and comparing it to this... I mean, it's kind of easy to see why one would be perceived as more polished than the other. I'm just saying. And also, I just want to point out, the Halo Infinite footage is mine. You can tell because my big stupid face is on the side because it's pulled from a live stream. But the actual footage from Battlefield 2042 is not mine. I'll leave a link to where I got it from down below because I didn't play Battlefield 2042 because, well, I have a lot of reasons. I watched streamers play it, I watched my friends play it, but in reality, I was not going to spend $70 on what, to me, looks like something that would have just barely been in, like, second phase development as an internal testing alpha. Like, let alone a full release. This looks like it was barely into its second phase of testing internally, but it's what we got. Yeah, I wasn't going to spend $70 on that. And I do not blame the people who spent the money on this for putting up a petition to get a refund for it on all platforms. Like, Halo Infinite was sort of disappointing at launch. You were missing a lot of playlists, and it seemed like 343 was going to put those playlists in as, like, waves of events. But in reality, people complained about that and said, no, we want to be able to play as many playlists as possible. And 343, what? They listened. And we've been getting updates consistently to make sure the game is more polished, and in general, we're getting a better experience overall. I'll talk about why I have a bit of a problem with that, even though Halo's doing it, but from what I understand from the history of the Battlefield franchise, it's not promised that Battlefield is going to get many updates, and very well may get dropped at a certain point within the next year to by year during their release cycle for the next Battlefield that's going to be probably even worse. As far as I understand, it's been, what, 3-4 months since Battlefield last got an update? That's a while, and I would think that for a game that is seemingly as unpolished as it is, I would think that it would get more updates. Now, I don't know that for a fact, don't quote me on that, but All I know from my personal experience is that there have been a lot of updates pushed to Halo and not a whole lot of updates pushed to Battlefield. But even with that, even with the fact that Halo is getting updates, I still have a problem with that because it is part of the issue that exists in the modern gaming industry. Here's what I mean. So for those of you who watch me on my live streams, which if you don't, my Twitch is linked down below, I have 3 games in my roster right now, and one of them is a modern game, which is Halo Infinite. The other 2 are Yakuza 0, which came out in 2015. It's not the oldest game, but it's still 6 years old, and I haven't gotten any updates for it, so there's that. And the other game is Breath of the Wild, which I am playing on an original Nintendo 64. Now, why am I saying this? Well, Yakuza is sort of an exception. Obviously, Halo Infinite is new, but we'll use the game Ocarina of Time as an example. When this game came out, internet was in its infancy, and there was no way in hell that that console was going to be hooked online unless you somehow got your hands on a Nintendo 64 disk system, which we didn't get in the US. And even then it was dial-up. Either way, I'm rambling now. We could not get updates for these games, which means that when they came out, they had to be finished. And the only way of getting an update out to a game was to manufacture brand new cartridges for a revision. And there were 3 revisions to Ocarina of Time, but most people, if they bought the first edition, that's what they had. There was no update, no fix, no removing of the music for the Fire Temple. In general, it is what it is. That's it. But those examples can be traced even further forward with things like Halo 1, Halo 2, even Halo 3. Those games had to be polished right out of the gate. And it's not just the Halo franchise. Battlefield, 1942, Battlefield Bad Company, 1, 2, 3. Those all had to be as close to finished or fully finished as possible when they came out, because back in the day, the early days of the 360 and before, updates from consoles that were online was not a guarantee. People who had consoles online were in the minority, especially at the launch of a lot of these consoles. Hell, I have a friend who had an Xbox 360 all the way up until our graduating year that was never hooked up to the internet, which means I could probably ask him if he still has that Xbox 360, and I could get an Xbox that still has the Blades interface. Now, it seems like I'm rambling, but I'm getting to my point. Nowadays, consoles being hooked up to the internet is the commonly expected thing, and the people not online are now the ones in the minority, which means that game developers are using this as a cushion to say, oh, don't worry, we'll push out fixes for it later. On top of that, pressures from above, from the companies that own these developers, force these companies to push out games every 1 to 2 years, meaning that things have to be pushed to the side, cut, not finished and promised to be updated later, and then shat out on a yearly or bi-yearly basis to just, I don't know, you're obviously not appeasing the fans, so at this point I don't know what you're pushing it out every year or every 2 years for. Examples of rushed production not being a good idea can be seen in so many places other than just video games. Look at the freaking Star Wars franchise, for example. They tried to push out a Star Wars movie every year. With the new trilogy, Solo, Rogue One, all these things coming through. And at the point where Solo failed, they kind of said, hey, maybe we should just focus on quality over quantity. But that hasn't made its way to the gaming industry yet. And to some degree, it still hasn't even made it to the Star Wars franchise yet. This all just really irritates me because I grew up in an era where games were either good or bad. There was no game is bad, but via DLC will become good, and then game is good, but we can add to it and it will be better. I think the only exception to that was back in the day when I had the Maptacular map pack for Halo 2, and that wasn't even fixing shit, that was just adding things. And then what really pisses me off is when a game company that basically perfectly embodies everything I hate about the current gaming industry looks at a game that took an extra year to develop and polish itself. A game company that is actually trying to listen to the fans, to add things that we're complaining about, to fix things that we're noticing. A game that is free to play and goes, oh, well, it's their fault. They are too polished. They are perceived as more polished than our game. You charged $70 for an unfinished pile of garbage with 3 game modes, graphical glitches that I have not seen since oh my god, I don't even know the last time I saw something that looked this bad. With physics glitches in an engine that you guys have presumably been, I don't know, I thought you were like improving the Frostbite engine since Battlefield 4, 5? When did you guys actually stop caring about fixing anything in the Frostbite engine? Or do you not even use that engine anymore? I don't know. I don't care enough anymore. In general, the gaming industry sucks right now. And it's not for a lack of creativity. There are so many games that I see from indie developers. There's so many cool things out there from small developers that need more of a spotlight, because right now, the big wigs, the ones that sit at the top as these big AAA titles who have been around forever, these guys are basically becoming complacent. And it just pisses me off that a company that is exactly like that, a company that is perfectly the big wig, we've been around, you peasants can't understand, we'll give you our scraps and fix it later, you might get some garnish with your sawdust. A company like that looks at a game and a company who is literally trying to recapture what made the game good and actually listen to the fans and try to push out a game that is actually somewhat playable and fun, on top of actually having a campaign that's really good. You look at them and go, you're the problem. No EA, no DICE, no Battlefield. You are the problem. And it needs to stop. This was a rant. I didn't expect to get as heated about this as I do, but like, just with the collection of games I have and the experiences I've had with gaming through the years, it's harder and harder to get excited for newer games because there's always this air of cynicism, this air of cautious optimism, and I'm sick of it. I'm just sick of it. This is just another example. Anyway, that's my rant. I'm tired of EA and DICE. They need to burn in a pit. And aside from that, I think either give Battlefield an extra 2 years, like double their time for development and maybe get something good out of it, or just stop making it. I know you're not going to do that, but oh my god. Like take a page out of Halo's book. Strip your game engine, make it something new-ish, and then spend 6 years developing a story that's good, developing multiplayer that you can actually proudly push out with not as many glitches. God damn it. All right, I'm done. Bye. See you later. Make sure to subscribe, like, comment, all that shit. Later.